until you actually go out there and do something. When it comes to running, you may not realize the challenge that it is, but it was also something very satisfying and a sense of accomplishment. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I thought, well, this could be fun.
Okay.
So I signed up for it. And after that, I told myself never do a 100-miler. But then, of course, I signed up for an actual 100-miler.
How long did it take you to finish that 100-miler?
30 hours. The first step can be the hardest because it's an unknown. I think it prevents us from doing things that we're really capable of doing.
Hi, my name is Kat. Join me on my morning run to talk about running, work, and life in between. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Good morning, runner viewers. Today we are running with Nikki Cannon, who is not just a marathon runner, but also an ultra marathon runner. So she clearly loves to challenge her mind and her body. And it's a person who contributes a lot to the Houston running community. So thanks for running with us this morning, Nikki.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Of course, we're excited for great weather and great conversation.
Yes.
So your Instagram tag is I was born to run. Why do you think you were born to run?
I just think that it's, something that is my passion. It took me, a while to find that because running was not always something that I enjoyed. But I think that kind of just goes with, sometimes the things that you end up enjoying and loving in life, you kind of have to stick with it. And that was me when it came to running, that, initially it was more just something I did for exercise. And, I signed up for my first half marathon more as kind of like a bucket list sort of thing. And even after that, I still was kind of like, I'm not sure about this running thing. But then the more I ran, the more I, found myself enjoying it. And I think also it was, I found it to be something to help me, relieve some stress. It was kind of like also alone time for me to just kind of,
Have your thoughts.
Have my thoughts. And, eventually it just became a thing where I'm like, okay, I love doing this. And so that's how,
the name came?
The name came, yeah.
That's awesome. Were you inspired by the book or did you even know that?
No, I didn't know that book existed until after. And so once I got into running, then, I would see running books pop up. And so I saw that book and of course I had to buy it and I read it a couple times, but it's been a while. So that's, once you mentioned that, I was like, oh, maybe that's a book that I need to pick up and read again. So
that's cool. For our listeners, there's a book called I Was Born to Run, and it's quite a fascinating story. So I thought maybe they're somehow connected. Well, I think your story is interesting because, as you mentioned, growing up, you didn't like running, and you transitioned from not doing and not liking running to becoming an ultra. So can you tell us, how did you transition from that to your first half that I think you ran in 2010?
Once again, it was, I ran in college just to do more exercise. And then I guess I was maybe just looking for something to do, a challenge. And so since I was running, kind of heard, people doing different distances, and half marathon, I guess, seemed like a good challenge, kind of just skip over the 5K and the 10K and go to the half. But I did. I signed up for it, and then once you sign up for it, then it kind of gives you something to work towards.
Okay.
And so I would run, 3 or 4 times a week, and it was definitely tough and challenging, because I think, until you actually go out there and do something when it comes to running, you may not realize the challenge that it is, but it was also something very satisfying and a sense of accomplishment that I was able to achieve something that I set for myself.
So do you think that was the reason why you came back and started doing more halves? Why you stuck with it?
I think so. After that, it still took me, several years before I finally, found running to be something that I enjoyed. So I would sign up for the half that I did my first one at for the next several years. And so I started to, run more consistently at that point. But then, as I was saying, it still took me a little bit of time.
Yeah, so 2014 is when you did your marathon,
first marathon.
Your first marathon.
Yes.
And it wasn't just a regular marathon.
No, it wasn't.
It was the Dopey Challenge. So can you tell the listeners what's the Dopey Challenge is about, please?
So Dopey Challenge is a race challenge that the Run Disney puts on, and this was actually the inaugural Dopey Challenge for the first year they did it. And so what that consists of is running a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a marathon in 4 consecutive days.
Crazy.
And so, I think by that point I had run like 4 half marathons. And so
in 4 years?
In 4 years. So I saw that, and I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I thought, well, this could be fun.
Okay.
So I signed up for it. And that was my first marathon that I did.
So you decided to change. You thought that one marathon is not enough challenge for the body. Let me
do all these distances prior.
A warm up.
Yes.
So how did the race go?
It was definitely hard because I had done those distances prior, and I wasn't going for time or anything. And it was going well until about the halfway point.
Okay.
Because a few months prior, I had fallen, and I didn't know, but I ended up getting a stress fracture.
Oh my.
And so I did go to the doctor, and that's what they diagnosed it with. So no running. So essentially for the last 2 months before that race, I didn't do any training, no running, so to let it heal. And it felt better, and I went through the first 3 days, and it was good, but then I think just jumping right back into running right away, and the miles just re-aggravated it. So about halfway, I could feel the pain again.
Oh my.
And so essentially the last half I kind of walked it.
So you still decided to walk and not DNF?
Right, yes. I was like, I started this, I'm gonna finish it. It was, I'm not gonna lie when I say it was miserable, because I was hurting, just because of the distance itself, but then also because my leg was hurting. But even then, as I was crossing the finish line, just because it was my first one, I just kind of like got overwhelmed with what I was able to accomplish. So even though it didn't go as I had hoped for, I still was very proud of being able to finish a full marathon.
Okay, yeah, it's definitely a big accomplishment, especially considering all the pain that you had to overcome, not just mental but physical, of course. And I see that many runners, despite of these challenges and pain during, still come back and run again and again and again. Why do you think we are doing it? Why are you doing it?
That's a good question. I think it's different for everybody. But I think one of the biggest things is, just the being able to, overcome obstacles and challenges. I think, setting yourself a goal, especially maybe if you fell short of that goal.
Okay.
So you want to come back and try to, I guess, prove to yourself that you're able to, accomplish or achieve that goal that you set. I know for me, that's a lot of the times why I will come back, even though I know, running several marathons, I know how hard and challenging it can be, but I still continue to, sign up for marathons. And then when I'm at mile 20, I'm thinking, why did I sign up for this again?
Yes. Remind me, please.
Exactly.
Well, you're clearly a very dedicated person. You went from running marathons to running ultras. Can you tell us about your first ultra? I think it was 2020.
2020, so that was the year of COVID.
Okay.
So, the world shut down.
Yeah.
They canceled races. And so there wasn't really a lot for us to do. And so, looking back on, my running journey, 2020 was kind of the year where the ultras, I guess you could say, were born for me.
Okay.
Because, since we were quarantined, I went out and ran. And I think also, because we couldn't go out and do anything, and, that social aspect of, seeing our friends and things like that, it really was, more of an outlet as well.
That's true.
And so some of the, races that got canceled, they would, come up with different challenges, just to keep us motivated and still do something. And so I would sign up for them. And one of them was to do a 50K.
Okay.
But not just one, it was multiple 50Ks. And we would have, almost all summer to do them, to complete.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, hey, this could be a fun challenge. So I did that, and I was planning on doing one maybe like once a month.
Okay.
And then I started thinking to myself, well, instead of once a month, how about I try and do, once a week and get it done in a month?
Okay.
And then this is where my mind goes.
Yes, I can see that.
I was like, well, instead of, one every week, what if I try and do it one every day for 4 straight days? So I got up one morning, I did the 50K, got up the next morning, and I did that 4 days in a row. So
oh boy.
That was my first 50K. I did several virtuals that year, but then my first official ultra, it was in February of 2020.
Okay.
2021, excuse me, yes.
But let me go back to those first 50Ks.
Okay.
How long would it take you to run that in a day? Roughly.
The first one I did, I actually split up.
Okay.
I started in the afternoon, and then I
Oh,
took
yeah, 'cause it was summertime.
It was summer. So I took a couple hour break, and then I started up again. But then the next 3 I just did all in a row, and it took me, I was looking back at the times, it took me 7 hours, I want to say.
So basically a working day.
Yes.
All right. Okay. And you were running by yourself, right?
And I was running by myself, and I would do it around my neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And after that, at some point, I think the longest you've done so far.
So far.
Not that I'm challenging you right now, okay? We're gonna turn here. Okay. The longest that you've done is 100 miles.
Yes.
As far as distance. Okay. So I never done ultras. I admire people who do that. But I happened to pace a couple of friends on one of the legs. And I remember my first time going to the event, I thought I would see all this super lean athletes, determined, and I saw lots of regular people like myself. And maybe some people who were not necessarily in their best shape. And yet they were pushing themselves and challenging their bodies. Why do you think people sign up for ultras even though it's really demanding on their bodies? Why did you sign up for
Once again, I think it's the challenge.
Okay.
But also, as I have run, maybe not necessarily ultras, but a lot of the ultras are on trails.
Yeah.
And so as I started to run more trails and do races,
Okay.
it's a different, I guess you'd say, vibe.
Okay. I heard that. Trail versus road.
Versus road.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's not competitive, but I really feel like the majority of people who are out there doing ultras are really out there to give themselves a challenge. Everybody is very encouraging and supportive, and it's not to say people who run road races are not, but I just get that when you're passing somebody on the trail, it's always like, hey, you're doing a good job, keep going, you got this. And then I just think another thing too is you're just out in nature, and just being out there in nature, people who enjoy that instead of running on pavement. So
definitely very meditative.
It is. So it's you're still running, but it's also a different kind of vibe when you're out there running ultras.
I heard that from, again, my running friends, that trail running is really a lot about the community. In road running, you kind of by yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're pushing, you want to win, but trail running, it's about each other, and there's so many amazing volunteers there.
Oh yes, the volunteers there at the aid stations, because when you have aid stations at a road race, depending on the distance, they're out there for a couple hours, but ultras and trails, they're out there for the entire day. And so being very appreciative of the volunteers, because honestly, those volunteers, they may not realize it, but they can make a huge difference. Just you go 4, 5, 6 miles without seeing anybody. And so then you get to an aid station and you see a smiling face or somebody who's like, oh, hey, you're doing a great job. It's something that can really, lift your spirits, especially when maybe you're struggling a little bit. So yeah.
That's for sure. Well, I presume 100 miles, at some point you probably ran at night.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that experience? Did you take a nap? What did you do?
So I've done 2. One was virtual during COVID.
Okay.
And after that, I told myself never do a 100-miler. But then, of course, I signed up for an actual 100-miler. So when I did the one on the trails, this was back in 2024. It was at Huntsville, so Rocky Raccoon. I did not sleep at all, even during the night. It was one of the hardest things I've done, just purely from a standpoint because of the conditions of the race. It had poured rain the night prior, and so the trails were muddy. There were times where we were having to like walk through water that was essentially up to our knees. And so there were several instances where I was ready to, stop, or I wanted to sleep. And it was during, I want to say, the third loop, when I was able to have pacers. No, it was the fourth loop, where luckily I had those pacers, because I think that if I didn't, I probably would have stopped and fallen asleep. But I think that also kind of shows that even though you have goals for yourself, and you are the one that has to go out and physically do those things, run or bike or whatever your goal is, a lot of times you're not able to accomplish those goals without support from other people. And so having people around you to help support you and cheer you on is a really big thing when it comes to setting goals, and especially with ultras. That 100-miler, I couldn't have done it without the crew that was there with me. So
that's good to hear. I think just like in regular life,
too,
we need our community, or our people to help us. How long did it take you to finish that 100-miler?
It took me 30 hours, right under 31. My goal was to try to finish it, within 24, 26 hours. But the conditions it made it tough. After I ran the first loop, which is 20 miles, it felt like I had already done 2 loops, because I had done that course before, just the shorter distance. And so it was just taking a lot longer. You really couldn't run, because every time you stepped, your foot would sink down into the mud.
I can.
So it
imagine.
It was hard to just even run at all. You were really almost walking a lot of it till the end, when it stopped raining and some of the ground dried up.
Yeah, well, of course your legs are getting heavier.
Yes.
And you're carrying all that weight. But I think that it's still amazing that you did not stop despite the conditions. And truthfully, I think that it's a win, right? That only selected few actually win the race.
Yes.
But again, just doing some of it or parts of the race, and then being surrounded with people who have done it, I think it's not about just winning the race, it's about winning those voices that you have in your head. So I was wondering, what voices did you have in your head when running this? What were they telling you?
Oh, it's just stop, quit, this is too hard. You could be done if you just finish right now. And so I think, yes, you're training your legs and your body to be able to go that distance, but I think, more importantly at times is training your mind and your mental strength. That when you come to a challenge or obstacle during a race, because yes, you would want to have the perfect race and nothing goes wrong, but a lot of the time that doesn't happen. So you got to figure out, hey, when something's not going right, what are you going to do? You're going to still try and push, keep going, or you're just going to kind of throw your hands in the air and say, oh, well, you know what, it's not going my way, so I'm just going to give up. And so for me, especially once again because of the conditions, there were probably more times than maybe if it wasn't muddy, where I was telling myself, I want to stop, I want to be done. But that goes back to having support, because there were a couple times my best friend was there crewing, and she was there the entire time, and she wouldn't let me stop, even though she could tell that I was done. And she stayed very positive and encouraging and told me, like, hey, you got this, just focus on getting to the next aid station. I think also that's another thing, is just kind of focusing on smaller goals within the big goal, because if I was thinking about, oh my goodness, I still have 60 miles, I think it will become a lot more overwhelming, and
for sure,
you would probably want to give up a lot sooner versus, all right, hey, let me just get to the next aid station, which is 5 miles, 4 miles. So then you break it up by that, and eventually the last 4 miles that you do, you're gonna get to the finish line.
Yes. So. But what were you telling yourself back, or those voices, when they were telling you, okay, I'm so sleepy, it's so muddy, I want to stop, I don't want to, why am I even doing this? What are you responding back just to push? I think when you start to have those negative thoughts, if you keep letting yourself have those negative thoughts, it just will make it easier for you to say, okay, I'm done. Okay.
And so even though I did have those, like, I'm tired, I want to be done, you kind of have to switch your mindset and say, all right, I got this. Like, let me focus on the next, mile. And it really helped, basically the last half, where I had a pacer.
Okay.
Because they were encouraging, and they were talking to me, one, to help me stay awake,
yeah,
but then also to help me keep my mind off of what I was doing. And so I think when you focus on the negatives or dwell on it, it makes it easier to kind of put yourself in that position where you're not going to want to continue.
That's true.
So it's just changing your mindset, and it's not going to make it easier per se, but you're just focusing more on what you've accomplished. And that's the other thing too, is instead of saying, oh, I have 50 more miles, say, okay, I've already done 50 miles. So
positive reinforcement.
Yes,
that's a good one. Well, you clearly have strong mind, because you've also challenged yourself for your 40th birthday, right?
Yes.
And you decided, well, why not just have a cake? Let me run and do 40 marathons in 40 days.
Yes.
How and why did you come up with this idea?
Well, 40 is a big milestone birthday, and a lot of runners on their birthdays, they'll go out and run the miles or kilometers. And so I was thinking, well, okay, I could do 40 miles, 40 kilometers,
40 meters.
40 meters, 4 miles, 4.0 miles. But, I had already done some ultras and some of those, virtual challenges.
Go here.
So I, once again, kind of thought, like, what would be something challenging? I was like, well, I could do 4 miles every day. But then I was thinking, that's maybe, that's a good challenge. but you know, I really wanted to kind of push myself. And so I thought, well, what if I did 40 kilometers? Because doing 40 miles, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that one. So 40 kilometers, which I did the math because we do miles here, is right under 25 miles. And so then I thought to myself, well, if I'm doing 25 miles, might as well just go another 2 kilometers and do a marathon. So that's how that challenge came to be, and I had started or planned to start it 40 days prior to my 40th birthday, so my 40th would be on my 40th birthday.
Okay, that's very cool. But not only you did that, you also decided to support the cause, right?
Yes.
And you chose Souls for Souls.
Yes.
Why did you choose that nonprofit, and what is it about?
So Souls for Souls is, you know, an organization that, you know, collects shoes that people donate.
Okay.
And then they take those donations and they provide them to, you know, kids and, you know, other people who don't necessarily have, you know, the means to have running shoes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's so many people out there that, you know, would enjoy, you know, the sport and get out there, but they just, you know, don't have, you know, the proper footwear.
Yeah.
And so when I, you know, decided to do that challenge, I thought, you know, yes, I want to, sorry about that, do this challenge for myself, but I also, you know, want to try and, you know, do something for, you know, other people so that they can, you know, go out and enjoy something as, you know, like what I'm able to do.
Yeah.
And so I set a goal of the dollar amount would be the number of miles over the course of 40 days.
Okay.
And I was able to hit that goal, which, you know, I think I was maybe just as excited.
Yeah.
Being able to raise money for a cause outside of, hey, I'm just doing this challenge just
For myself.
for myself. Yes.
No, I like that you're giving back to the community. And I know you're a big part of it. I mean, we were introduced by one of the girls who you randomly met.
Yes.
And then you paid her, I think, for her first half. So thank you for cultivating some runners here.
Yes.
What advice would you give to a person who wants to start running, or maybe run her first half or full, or, you know, first ultra?
I think, you know, the biggest thing is to just take the first step. I think sometimes the first step can be the hardest because it's an unknown. You know, when I signed up for my first half or marathon, etc., since I had never done it, I didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
And I think, you know, as humans, we don't want to fail. And we want to be successful. And so when we can't necessarily control that, I think it prevents us from doing things that we're really capable of doing. And that's, you know, something that I've found through running is, you know, we hold ourselves back a lot of times from going out and achieving, you know, things that we could. And so, you know, that's the biggest thing is just go and take that first step. You know, whether you want to get into running, because I've had, you know, some people ask, like, I want to start running. What do I need to do? And I tell them, just go out and start running. You know, you don't have to go out and do something big. You know, don't go try and run 5 miles the first time.
Yeah.
You know, start small, and then you can build up. And same thing like with races too. You know, or distances. You know, if you haven't done a 5K or a 10K and that's a goal, then, you know, sign up. And I think that also gives you some accountability too, because now you have a goal to work towards.
Yeah, that's good. What is the worst advice that you think a runner can get? I
think one of the biggest things is maybe just don't get caught up in what other people are doing. I think and I will sometimes, see other people and hear them and talk to them and, how they're successful. And so because we see that, we want to try to mimic exactly what they're doing. But everybody is different and we don't know what their journey is, the obstacles they've overcome. So I think, just, going out there and doing, what's best for you.
Yeah.
And, not thinking that every race that you run has to be a PR.
Yeah, that's true.
And
hard to switch that.
I think that is hard. But I think sometimes when we focus on some of those things, it can take the joy out of something that you initially started out doing
For fun.
and something that you enjoy.
I think that's a good one. We often do compare ourselves with others, and sometimes, I'll be honest, I would think, how on earth you find time and energy to join all these running clubs? But hey, we're all different. How about your training? How do you train for your marathons, for your ultras? Any secrets?
I think it's just it's a learning process. You're always trying to tweak, what you did from the last one.
Okay.
And do something differently, especially, if the race or the outcome wasn't what your goal was.
Okay.
And so I've kind of, over the years, I would follow like certain set plans that I would just basically find online. And then over the years, my training plan is kind of a combination of different plans and, finding things that work for me. But as far as schedule, I run in the morning before work because that's, just works out best for me. So
do you run every day?
I run, right now it's pretty much 6 days a week, and then I have a rest day.
Okay, that's good.
When I was training for ultra, I was, almost every single day, most weeks. But even then, I still think it's important to give your body, a rest day.
Of course. What do you do for your recovery?
After running?
Yeah.
After running,
Other than eating,
sorry.
Other than eating donuts.
After running, you should, do your cool down and stretching and foam rolling. And I'm not always the best at that. That's something that, I'm trying to incorporate and be better at. But that's, recovery. If I do a long run, I have, some compression boots.
Okay.
I'll take an ice bath.
Okay.
That helps.
That's good. How about nutrition? How do you adjust that, if any? For marathon training, when you did your 40-40 for ultras.
It's different.
You always hungry?
Yes, especially during, when you're at the peak of marathon training, making sure you're getting, good amounts of carbohydrates. I find that, protein is very important too, because it helps, with muscle recovery.
Absolutely.
Getting enough, hydration, because, what you eat, in the days leading up to, a hard workout and a race, can really impact the outcome or how it goes. And, sometimes if I have a not good workout, I'm like, man, my legs felt good, but I just didn't have any energy. And then I think back to what I ate the day prior, and sometimes it's because I, was eating, my regular, it's not like I was cutting back, but it was more, I should have had more carbohydrates because I had more miles or I had, a harder workout.
Yeah, it's definitely important. And It's almost like having a second job.
Yes, and then ultras, fueling is a lot different.
We're gonna turn here.
We're gonna turn. Oh, up here?
Right here. Okay.
Fueling for ultras is a lot different.
Okay.
So I started training with actual food for ultras
Okay.
instead of gels.
Yeah.
So when I would go out on runs, I would take, peanut butter sandwiches, trail mix, just so that you could get your body and your stomach used to eating those foods, because you can get through a half or a full on gels.
Yeah.
But when you're out running for 7 to 8 hours,
Yeah.
having real food can make a huge difference. So
Absolutely. Well, Nikki, I know outside of running, you also have a full-time job,
yes.
and you happen to teach kids, which is quite demanding. Can you tell us what do you teach, and why did you choose that profession?
So I teach intermediate health, and at our school it's 7th to 8th graders.
Okay.
So I have 7th graders this year.
Stick to it.
And this is right now year 18.
Wow.
I didn't think I would make it to 18 years, I'll be honest. But how did I get into teaching? It wasn't something that I pursued in college. I actually wanted to become a doctor.
Okay.
But then when I was going to school and seeing, all of the courses and the years that you're gonna have to go, I was like, I don't want to do that. So I stuck with my major, which was fitness and wellness.
Okay.
And then after I graduated, I ended up getting a job at a gym, not like in the fitness section, it was like childcare.
Oh, wow.
So while parents,
Yeah.
were working out, they have employees, wash your kids and things like that. So that's what I did. And during that time, I thought, I like this, play with them, play games, interact with them. So that's kind of where I thought, maybe I should, be a teacher. So I went back to school and got my, teaching degree certification, and then started teaching after that.
That's cool. And I know there is a lot going on right now in education.
Yes.
Well, as far as the changes, but there are clearly some challenges. So from your perspective as a teacher, where do you see some challenges in the current education system?
Oh, there's challenges, definitely.
Other than low pay.
Yes.
We know that.
I just think it can be very overwhelming with, what's being asked of, educators now.
Okay.
And as you were mentioning, they keep piling on, more responsibilities, but the pay stays the same. And so that's, one of the biggest things too is, it's leading to teachers getting burned out.
Yeah.
And so they're not able to retain teachers. So there's a lot of, turnover, which then can be hard, on schools to have any consistency. Same thing, kids, 1 year they have one team, and I mean, it changes from grade to grade, but just, there's no consistency. Challenges when it comes to, what you're teaching.
Okay.
Because
The curriculum,
we have a set curriculum that you have to get through, and then, there's a lot of emphasis on standardized testing.
Yeah.
And so instead of, teaching students, curriculum, that maybe will help them once they graduate. I'm not saying they're not learning that. They're teaching them more how to take a test, unfortunately. And
not so much critical thinking.
And critical thinking and problem solving, which those are skills that, it doesn't matter what profession they go into.
Yeah.
They're going to need those.
Absolutely.
So those are some, challenges, and just technology, as much as it has been a, huge positive in all the advancements. It's also, can be a daily struggle with, kids wanting to use their phones and
during classes,
technology, depending on what district you're into, some districts, they have, the funding to provide technology, whereas there's other schools, in districts where they don't have that funding.
Absolutely.
So they're at a disadvantage, to provide the technology and even resources, for kids. And so those are, some different challenges that, educators, not just, here in this area, but I think, across the country are, dealing with, every day and every year.
Absolutely. I mean, we all, when we buy a house, right?
Yes.
School district is one of the important criteria in choosing where you want to buy a house. Just crazy.
Yes.
But that's the reality. Well, I do hope it's gonna get better, and even though, as my boss says, hope is not a strategy, but let's see what the administration has for us.
Yes.
You clearly have a strong mindset. Have you always had that?
I think everybody has that mental strength. I think, it's something that you have to build and get stronger, just like, your physical muscles. If you don't work them out, they're not going to get stronger. And so kind of going back to that mindset of when you come, to a challenge or obstacle, not just in running, but in general, if, you figure out a way to overcome it or you push through, I think, that makes your mental strength stronger. And so the next time you get to a challenge, you can remember or rely on, hey, you know what? I've already done this. I can keep going. I can do this. Or, once again, it's just kind of challenging yourself to doing something that is outside your comfort zone. Even though, once again, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. I think when you do hard things, regardless of the outcome, you're building that mental strength,
resilience,
and resilience, so that when you do have, challenges and obstacles, you're able to, overcome them and push past, the demons.
Yeah, you are thinking, the voices.
The physical, pain that you may be experiencing, because it's, temporary. And so that might be one of my, things that I think about too is, yes, I'm, uncomfortable. I'm not enjoying this exactly too much. But it's temporary.
It's temporary.
And so I don't want to have that where, I stop and then I look back and I think, well, if I could have just endured, a little bit longer, I would have been able to, go further. So I think, just a little by little, it's something that, I've been able to, get stronger, through, challenging myself with different things.
That's good. And I know you have another challenge coming. It's a Boston Marathon. I think the official 5th one in person.
Yes.
So we hope that all that training and mindset and resilience are gonna come handy there. In fact, we're confident it would be.
Yes.
It was a pleasure running with you.
Oh, yes.
Pleasure knowing you.
Pleasure talking with you
and
too.
good luck
All
with
right,
the next race.
We hope this episode will inspire you to stay active and never give up.